The ultimate goal of the Urban Servant Leadership Unconference, we want to be able to bring together as many pieces of the puzzle as we can so that ultimately we put together a picture that helps us see and to understand what a valuable, sustainable community needs to look like.
I'm here because my personal life mission is to help others help themselves. It's the epitome of what servant leadership is all about.
So I wanted to come to the Unconference today so that I could discuss the Healthy Indiana Plan, which is a healthcare plan that's available to folks between the ages of 19 and 64 who have incomes at less than 138% of the federal poverty level.
My name is Anita Adams. I work with Indianapolis Healthy Star. We know that there are inequalities that are happening in our community, and we work to reduce those for families.
You have to be called to be a servant leader because you know that you are going to give and you may not get anything in return, and that's okay. And an urban servant leader is called to do what we do.
You should really research it. If you were not here, I urge you, I cannot say this enough, that you need to come to the next conference.
All right, what's up, everybody? Pastor G, Community Conversations is on again. As I told y'all, man, we are on a marathon today. We have had just a dynamic day of talking to community leaders. We've talked to civic leaders. We have talked to Reverend Richard Bray over there at the CTS, Christian Theological Seminary. We talked to Attorney Roderick Bohannon, who's with the Legal Redress Committee of the NAACP. We talked to Reverend David Green, who's with Concerned Clergy. We just got off with Dr. Woody Myers, who is running for governor of the state of Indiana. And so before I tell y'all who is up next, some of y'all already know. Make sure y'all are sharing. Go into your messenger and share in your messenger. We're live on Periscope. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Facebook on a couple different accounts. Y'all make sure y'all share this conversation because the next person that's coming up is my guy. And so y'all get ready to hear from the man, the myth, the legend. Dee, the man Ross is in the house. Brother Dee, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm grateful to be on. Thank you for having me, Pastor G.
Man, this one's easy. Some interviews are hard. Some of them are hard to actually accomplish. But interviews like this are real easy because, number one, you're a friend of mine. You're a young champion in the community. You've done some great work. And so this is going to be a really easy interview. But before I jump into it, because we don't have a whole lot of time, and I realize that, and we do have some interviews after this, I want to get as much as I can in. So first of all, for those who are watching, because I know we have some folk on from Mississippi, we have some folk on from Tennessee, Memphis in particular, they don't know who Dee Ross is. Who is Dee Ross?
So my name is Dee Ross. I'm the founder and CEO of the Ross Foundation, a grassroots nonprofit organization on the east side of Indianapolis. Our mission is to take the community out of surviving mode into thriving mode through creating effective youth programs, repairing our communities, and developing leaders. We base all of those things off of 5 pillars: youth empowerment, crime prevention, advocacy, community wellness, and due to COVID-19, we created this last pillar, which is emergency response. And so we've been doing this work for the last 6 years, especially on the area of 42nd and Post Road, the far east side of Indianapolis, where I was born and raised. I lost 40 friends to gun violence and used to be a leader of a gang on 42nd and Post. Changed my whole life around. Wanted to become that role model I never had. Wanted to break that cycle of generational trauma and generational poverty. And so this is how the Ross Foundation came about. And we do numerous things, numerous programs, and numerous events throughout the year.
You know, I think the one thing that people who are listening to this right now will want to know is, what was it? And it may not be one thing. It may have been a series of things that may have happened. But what was it that clicked in your head that said, you know what? Not only do I need to shift, I need to shift and bring people with me. What was that thing that clicked in you?
It was 2 things for me. The the first thing was seeing two of my friends kill each other over $50. And then the next thing was I had an awakening. I don't know where it came from, but when I was like 18, 19 years of age, I had an awakening, and I envisioned myself from 10 years from now. And I said, and I looked at the people who was 10 years older than me that I was looking up to. And I said, where are they at in life? And they were stagnant. They was comfortable with being basic, being in the moment of selling drugs, shooting dice, gambling, running the streets. They didn't want more out of life. And I said, oh no, I cannot see myself being in that cycle in 10 years. And so I need to break away. I need to break that cycle of generational trauma and poverty and come back and help them break loose as well and represent hope for a hopeless community.
How challenging, maybe it hasn't been challenging, I don't know. You tell me whether it has or has not been challenging to get others to sort of look within themselves and say, you know what, do I have goals? Do I have aspirations? Where do I see myself in the next 5, 10, 15 years? How has it been, challenging or otherwise, to help your peers as well as those who are now looking up to you to get them to look up from their current state of affairs, their current situation, and begin to look forward into the future? How has that been for you?
Yes. So when I was running for city county council, my hashtag was why not me? And so my purpose, I believe, God has called me to do is to create millions of why not me's. I want people to be able to look in the mirror and say, why can't I be that doctor? Why can't I be that leader? Why can't I be that activist? Why can't I be that lawyer? Why can't I be that engineer? Why not me? And reshape their way of thinking. And so, yes, at the beginning, I did get a lot of pushback because they was like, man, how you from the streets, you just on the block with us selling drugs. You try to tell us what to do, right? They didn't respect my transition at first. They didn't believe it. They thought I was just doing it just to do it, but they didn't know how serious I was. But so over the course of time, of commitment and consistency of serving, being a servant leader in the community. And let me say this, not everyone's called to be a servant leader. And so when I was called into this realm of leadership, I took the challenge. But what I wasn't prepared for, the new devils to of each new level I elevated to. And so over the course of the time, it took a lot of growth and maturity and preparation to really get to that level of understanding that every level I get to in life, there will be a new devil to meet me at that door. And so once the people in my community, especially around 42nd and Post Road, started seeing how serious and commitment I was, it took years to really gain their respect in the work I do with the Ross Foundation. It took years, but once they started to see that I was real, that I was serious, that I left what I used to do in the streets behind and I'm not looking back, only forward, it started having a domino effect on them. How can I get involved? How can I be a leader? How did you transition from being a street guy to being a street leader? And so what I do now, so now I'm like a sense of hope for that community. I could go back into the trenches, into those areas and say, this is how I did it, and this is how I got it done. And so I kind of laid out a blueprint for them because they never seen it be done. And so this is the first time for them seeing it being done. And so it's like a blueprint. I'm like, look, I laid out the blueprint for you guys. There's no excuses. I sold drugs with you. I ran the streets with you. We got chased by the police together. We fought shootouts, everything together. and I still transition my life into a better situation in life, and I'm living my best life, and I'm not looking back.
Wow. So now here's the other thing. The other aspect to that is that peer pressure. We talk about peer pressure all the time. But I can imagine that there may have been others like you, and I'm going to hit this liberation piece. You've identified Black liberation. I want to hit that in a little real quick, but I can't leave the fact that peer pressure is strong in holding our young people in spaces and in ideologies and in mentalities that don't bode well for their future.
Yes.
That's peer pressure. It's like, man, I want to, I have the ability to get to A, but the peer pressure causes me not to let anyone know that I'm smart. You know what I mean? So if peer pressure is that influential to get our young people to go the wrong way, then how has peer pressure played in keeping your friends and relations and acquaintances from going the right way?
Right. Yeah. So peer pressure is something I fight every single day. That's something that will never escape, because coming from a community where all your friends and all your family members are in the streets, for the most part. And so it's like, how do you break away from people you love? And so um, I said I'm committed to breaking away for a short period of time, but I'm not forgetting you guys. And so once I got to the level of leadership I am today, now I have the ability and resources to pull them up by the bootstraps, to pull them up, reach one, teach one, right? And so uh, peer pressure is a real thing, and if not everyone's built for this type of work now, you know, and so I wouldn't try to put being a leader or an activist or a politician on anyone, because you have to be called to do this type of work, and the peer pressure that comes with it, the attacks, the level of attacks that comes with it. Not everyone's built for this type of work.
So you've identified this piece of Black liberation. Now, just so you know, I have a background in Black liberation theology, but you've identified Black liberation as, I guess, your stance when you're dealing with community issues. Can you flush that out for those who are not clear on what that means?
Yeah, so I believe in helping people advocate for themselves, teaching people to do for themselves. So through all our programs and events, we may serve them where the need is, but we help them not come back the next year and need that same need. We teach and advocate for sustainability within our communities. We don't want the same people coming back every single year to our back to school giveaways, our toy giveaways, or participating in our programs. We want them to graduate from that and overcome that circumstance and to be in a more sustainable situation where they can do for self. We really believe that once you take away the systemic barriers and challenges that is heavy on the Black community, a lot more scientists, doctors, engineers, lawyers will flourish, will come up out of that. But right now we are hit with so many different systems, left and right, and we're tired. And that's why you're starting to see a lot of people with what happened to George Floyd and Drayshawn Reed, with the police action shootings, and with the disproportionately being affected by COVID-19 and a lot of people are angry and tired, and mental health and trauma is a real thing. They are tired of these systemic barriers, these systems that is keeping us oppressed,
Yeah.
and they want to break loose. They want to break them chains.
So we've got, I mentioned to you earlier that we've got somebody on the street, as you mentioned, what you're seeing in the streets, the marching and the protests that are going on because people are tired, people are frustrated. And some of y'all saw the video that I did where I talked about, can you hear me now? Or can you hear us now? Where I sort of laid out some of the research that has been done that has shown that our African American communities have been underneath, literally systematically and intentionally underneath the foot of this country for over 401 years. And so out of that, we're seeing what's going on in the streets right now. So just want y'all to know that we have someone who's trying to call in right now, and they want to kind of give us an update of what's actually going on in the city downtown. So while I'm trying to get him on, I do want to ask you at least another question as he's trying to come on. I want to talk a little bit about how in your estimation do we move from the moment that we are in where you've got the marching and the protests where we could actually turn that into a movement? You admitted to yourself that people don't respect you just because you say, I need your respect. You have to earn respect, and it takes time to earn that level of respect. And so even with regard to what's going on in the streets right now, how can people effectively move from where we are now to where we have a movement that can be sustained and actually see not just small immediate changes, but see the kind of arc of justice that King talked about? What do you see there?
Yeah, so I would say the key words: grassroots, inclusion. There are grassroots organizations and all across Black and brown communities across the world that are usually not supported, usually don't have the services to be as effective as they can be. But there are over and over, you watch a lot of community centers and major agencies get all the resources and funding and support they need, but they are not really being intentional about meeting the people where they are or addressing the people who's directly impacted. And so we got Black people is the focus, and people are supporting Black-led organizations who's doing work around anti-systemic poverty.
All right, so I've been able to, thanks for giving us a very well thought out answer to that question, because clearly it is time for us as a community to recognize that marching and the protests are fine, but then we've also got to begin to think critically about what is our next move. How do we now come out of COVID? How do we now come out of these marches and whatnot and actually continue to make progress? And so right now, I want to bring into the conversation. It's going to be three of us on at the same time, so this is going to be kind of interesting. But we're going to try to bring into the conversation. Let's see. Let's get him in here. Where is he? Let's get me out and let's get him in. All right, get that one out. There we go. How does that look? Do y'all see everybody? Everybody see everybody?
Yeah.
Bro Chauncey, are you there?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
All right. Bro Chauncey, you're out in the street right now. You all were marching earlier today. We've got Brother Dee Ross on right now, and I'd like for you to share with us a little more about not only what's going on right now, but kind of give us a little bit of the why. What's been articulated as you all have been marching today? Go ahead.
Okay, so what we have is still, and they're still down here, still marching and protesting. Right now we have Matt Davis of the Indiana Racial Justice Alliance coming together and just speaking about the collective demands they have of IMPD. I'll read those quickly so we'll see what they're talking about. It's defund IMPD to refund the community programs and services is the first demand. 2, create community-led external review boards. 3, move internal affairs under external review. And 4, the FOP must have independent liability insurance. Those are the 4 demands that they are speaking today. And what I think I love most about this is that not only are we're out here protesting, but I do hear much conversation, much pull about those things that you and Dee Ross were talking about. I was watching the live and just talking about pushing past protests and working together in changing policy. The city county council president, Bob Osley, came out and he spoke to the crowd. He encouraged the crowd to hold the city county council accountable, and that if they don't do what we need them to do, he encouraged to vote those representatives out who represent us day in and day out.
Okay, so now you gave 4 demands, correct?
Yes.
And if you don't mind, give those one more time to make sure everybody heard those. One more time, those 4 demands. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Number 1, defund IMPD to refund community programs and services. 2, create community-led external review board. 3, move internal affairs under external review. And 4, the FOP must have independent liability insurance.
Okay. All right. So now here's the question, and I'm gonna pitch this to either one of you, but let's start with Dee. Here's my ultimate question. Some of the things that are on that list can be done immediately.
Yeah.
Some things on that list, based on the climate, and by climate I don't mean the climate. What I mean is that you've got meetings that have to take place. You got votes that have to be cast. There are things that have to be done in order for some of the things on that list to be done. There are other things on that list that may be, while it's not, it doesn't make them bad, it just makes them better long term. You follow? And so what I want to understand now from you all who are emerging leaders, how do we, starting with Dee Ross, how do we take those 4 demands and put them into proper perspective and recognize what do we need to fight for today? What do we need to fight for tomorrow? And what do we need to fight for next week? Does that make sense? Dee?
Yeah, so I know it's a lot of different meetings right now, different groups, and everyone's meeting with the chief, everyone's meeting with the mayor, officials, all across. But one thing that's missing is there's no coordination amongst the people who's meeting with the chief and with the mayor. There's so much division, and so we all need to get on the same page and coordinate together, and we all pushing the same message on the short term and the long term. That's how you can be most effective. And I'm not just talking about young people. I'm talking about millennials and elders. Everyone needs to be on the same page. This is a Black community fight issue, and it impacts all of us. And so we got to be clear on what the short term looks like, what we need right now, right? But then if you really want to start the healing process of restoring the relationships between us and the government and IMPD, then this is what we need from you guys right now. If you don't get this, then we don't even want to talk to you guys right now. Don't tell me to hold my community accountable when they see something to say something. When you guys are not willing to hold your own community accountable when they do something unlawfully. Now, even with the community review board, he's in those demands. When people have talked to the mayor, they want to make it 50-50 law enforcement and community. We cannot continue to do that. It has to be majority of community representation. Police cannot continue to police themselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Rev. Chauncey, what are you seeing on the street with regard to, and let me say this, before you respond, let me say this. You know, I do want to direct people to uniteforchange.org's website. There is a gaps and overlaps page, On that page, we have listed all of the demands that we can get our hands on from the various organizations that have demands or agendas, right? And here's what I've noticed, and Rev. Chauncey, I want you to address this, that there are, of those 4 things that you just mentioned, somebody has that already on their agenda. This speaks to Dee Ross. Somebody already has that on their agenda. Now, here's what we don't know. Not only who has it on the agenda, but who's tracking the progress. Who's answering the phones? Who's sending the emails? Who's setting up the meetings? You see what I'm saying? So you've got probably, some of that may be a part of 8 Can't Wait that Obama's pushing, right? So what are you hearing on the street around how those 4 overlap with what Indy 10 might be talking about in their George Floyd agenda? The AACI may be talking about in their agenda what Robin Shackelford is going to be talking about in their legislative agenda. What are you hearing in the streets about how is all that going to come together?
And with that question, I actually really echo the sentiments of Dee Ross. It's simply this, man. I think that's one of the weaknesses of this movement right now, is that though, like you said, there's 15, 20 organizations, and everybody has a list, and most of our lists are very similar. But we're not unifying the way that I think that if we could all come together, I think right now I'm seeing there's some new organizations out here. And so I see a bunch of new organizations coming together, but everyone's list is so similar but slightly different. And I think that's one of our weaknesses right now, is that we're still divided. You have the, I would say you have the ones, you have the Drayshawn Reed camp that are just saying justice for Drayshawn Reed. You have the camp that says, well, we need total reform of the system. And right. Drayshawn Reed's family and that movement is not saying we don't need that, but they're saying right now, well, we want to get justice for Drayshawn first.
Right, right. They want to hear from the coroner. They want to hear from the coroner. They want names released. Yeah. They want heads to roll right now because of what just happened a few weeks ago.
And see, and I agree. I said I love that. And if you've seen me out, Pastor G, that I'm out here. I'm not with the Indiana Racial Justice Alliance, but I'm supporting. I want to hear what they have to say. I want to see how we can bridge this gap that we have in communication with different organizations. Because Drayshawn Reed's family, yes, they need the justice now, but then certain organizations are coming together and saying we need this never to happen again, and that's where that reform comes in. But I think if we could come together, that the leaders can't ignore us, because they say, well, I don't have to listen to this crew because I've already got this crew that has a bigger name, and they're just wanting this, but this crew's wanting more, but they're just establishing themselves. But if we can partner together and say, guess what? No, these are the non-negotiables that have to happen, or you will see a revolt in the city.
Right. Go ahead.
And I think that's ultimately what the Black agenda should be, right? A short Black agenda that lays out the short term and the long term, and everyone being at the table and contributing, point blank. Like every leader we need a representation from each organization to sit at the table together and start laying out this Black agenda, a real effective Black agenda that is targeted towards ending systemic racism and poverty in our communities. And we need that right now. I think we need. I know a lot of people has a Black agenda and different things going on, but grassroots is not included. Grass House cultivated a Black agenda. Mm-hmm. So we got to figure out how to meet common ground where everybody's working together and laying out a complete package to present to the mayor, to the governor, and not just we're not asking, these are our demands.
Yeah.
And if you don't do what is requested of you, well, we're not voting you back in. We're gonna find somebody that we want in office who's gonna represent us.
Not only that, you got troops waiting in the wings, ready to roll at a moment's notice. And I think that what Chauncey and you all have done and I'm not for looting. I'm not for looting. I'm not for all of that went down, but I do realize in moments like that, looters will loot. Just like yellers will yell, screamers will scream, cries will cry, prayers will pray, looters will loot. And I do believe that much of that has a bearing on the fact that when Chauncey and those groups that are out there right now say, hey, we ready to hit the streets if Ross and his group don't get what they asked for and what Pastor is praying for, we're going to hit the streets. I think today, everything that has happened up to this point has made that threat much more imminent and much more real to people in positions, if that makes sense.
And I tell you, if anybody complaining about people looting, look at this from this lens. We live on looted land and looted wealth. And so,
yeah,
the country is the epitome of looting.
Yeah, and y'all know, for those who've seen the video, $70 trillion worth of looting to our community. And the numbers the estimated number that I came up with for the cost of these riots over 121 cities was roughly $3 billion. Now you compare $3 billion to 70 trillion, and there is no comparison. So that is totally the wrong lens to look through. So here's the deal. I'm hoping that that this video that we're working through right now gets to as many people as it can get to, because what I hear you all articulating is what I think is what's really needed, and that is while we understand that different groups have different agendas, different group has different demands, but we need to at some point come together, sort of unilaterally, whether that's one representative from each organization that desires to be a part, and say, number one, let's create a rubric.
Yeah.
And that rubric, just like in school, when you have a rubric, it is designed to give you a baseline to evaluate what's immediate, what's short term, what's mid-term, and what's long term, and why.
Yeah.
And let's get consensus from the majority of the people in the room, so that when we come out of the room, we have not only a list, but we have a list that everybody understands that this is what we're fighting for today. Mayors can enact policy that takes the chokehold out of the mix. They can take the knee in the neck, the knee in the back. They can take shooting in the car, in the moving car, shooting at someone that's running away, tasers, what they say, going into somebody's house without first knocking. They can do that immediately. But here's the problem. If all we do is march for immediate goals and forget that justice is a long arc, then we'll forget that we need to keep fighting for legislation that changes the laws, that not only does what we just said, but it goes further to do more, right? And that,
Absolutely.
And that gets into the other thing. So I agree, but I am going to challenge y'all as emerging leaders. What's step one to making that happen? I'm listening.
D, I'm gonna let you tackle that first, man.
Okay.
What's step one, fellas? I wish we need a lady on here, but go ahead.
Step one is dropping egos. That's step one. We got to drop the egos and people wanting to get all the credit and accolades for coming up with this agenda or get the rewards and the limelight and my organization did this, did that. No, this is about our future generations up to come. This is about our legacy of Black children. And so we got to drop the egos. That's number one. And part two of that is we have to start identifying who are the leaders in each organization who would like to come to the table. And if they are not willing to come to the table, then they shouldn't be in our community. It's bigger than us. It's bigger than us. If they make it about them, they are part of the problem. So vetting is number one.
And to your point, it was one of the former White House. He was a former White House something. He talked about generational arrogance. generational arrogance. And he suggested that part of the challenge in local communities is that we must remove generational arrogance from the conversation. And that goes in multiple ways. We have generational arrogance from our older generations and generational arrogance from our younger generations that needs to exit the building so that we can have constructive conversations. Chauncey?
You know what? I'm tired of being Dee Ross's echo, man. But I'm with him on that. And the word that came to my mind immediately before he started talking and while he was talking was sacrifice, man. That guess what? I think a lot of the differences in our different organizations and different movements that are happening right now and people emerging, I think a lot of our differences are based on preference, and we're building stuff into our separate agendas that they benefit us a little bit more than the people. And I do think we need to, hey, guess what? Sacrifice is not easy, but it's necessary to move the needle forward. And I do think, I like what you were talking about, Dr. Gurton, Pastor Gurton, that guess what? There is some kind of generational arrogance. There is that issue. Dee, you said that there were some, there's that sacrifice that needs to happen, that we got to get rid of the egos that at this point it's bigger than your organization. It's bigger than your name. It is our present. It is our future, that we have to overcome those things that held us back in the past, because right now we have the momentum. And if this movement is going to really change the system, we're going to have to let go of some of those things that we just want for our organization, or that claim to fame that some of us want. That it's time to be bigger than us. It's time for us to come together. And I like what Dee said, that if we invite you to the table, if you're invited to the table and all these organizations are coming together, everybody's coming together, and if you don't want to come to the table, it says more about your leadership than anything else.
Right, and on the real, and Chauncey, you and I are the Bible people, and we know what Jesus said about being a leader, right? He let us know that the greatest among you, right, will be the ones who are not in the front, right? The ones that are who leading from the back, and who are willing to sacrifice position and title and all of that in order to see the greater good in all that is going on. And Dee Ross, you are a walking example of that. You are living scripture in that. You follow? You are living scripture in that you are walking that scripture out each and every day by saying, look, what's most important is that I die empty, right? That I die empty, that I don't die with all of my potential stored up inside of me. I've got to pour out into my community for the benefit of those to whom I may never, ever see. I may never, ever know, right? And so I agree with you all totally. I'm just praying that at some point we can take this little bit of a conversation where we've talked about pride and ego and arrogance and say, okay, y'all, let's put those things to the side and do as Chauncey and Brother Ross have said, and look at the greater good that we could do if we would just work together. And right now, the iron is hot and it's time to strike. Right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
No better time than now for us to come together.
We cannot drop the ball. We cannot afford to drop the ball right now. We can't afford division right now. We have the upper hand. Let's finish it through.
I agree. Chauncey, you got one last word. I'm going to let you go because you're moving around like crazy.
Yeah, I'm downtown. My head's on a swivel. But I would leave it like I close my broadcast in the morning, that we carry a legacy to leave a legacy to be carried. And right now we're seeing we see legacies falling. We see legacies being carried. But I think now more than ever is the time that we say it's time for us to leave a legacy to be carried. And in this moment, what will your legacy be? Will your legacy be that your ego stopped progress? Or will your legacy be that you fed the process, you fed progress because you let go of you let go of your ego to ensure that your future generations could live on and be proud of what their forefathers did for them.
Real
Yes,
quick.
sir.
All right. And so, let's see. So he's gone. Brother Ross, we're going to close out this conversation. It's been great. It's been awesome. I certainly thank you for, spending some time with us. Again, I don't want this to end. I do want to make sure that, you've been invited to be a part of the Urban Servant Leadership Conference in the past. You weren't able to do it because you had some prior engagement. So I hope that as we head towards the virtual Urban Servant Leadership Conference on August the 15th, the goal, of course, is to now we're going to end up having more of a national conversation. So we got voices that are coming in from around the country at the virtual piece, but we certainly hope that we can get your commitment to try to make your way to the Urban Servant Leadership Conference on August the 15th, and at least, whether you're not giving us a main stage, at least give us some sort of a breakout or something.
Yeah.
On the 15th.
No. You got my full commitment. I owe you that. Whatever you need me to do, I'm here. You need me to speak or whatever it is, I'm here, man. I'm all in.
All right, so we're done for now. Again, I just want to thank Brother Dee Ross for spending some time with us. We're going to close out this session. We've been on for a good little while. We're going to close out this session here, and I'm going to go, take a little bit of a break. Just know I'll be back at 3 o'clock. This is a marathon of interviews today, y'all. A marathon. Plus, we're adding people on the fly, just like we added Rev. Chauncey in. We also added James Wilson in earlier before he hit the streets on the near east side of town. So we're just thankful for each and every one of y'all who have joined us. Brother Donnell Duncan, God bless you. Sister Francine Taylor, I see you. God bless you for joining with us. But more than anything, I want to thank my good brother Dee Ross for joining with us, man. We're going to keep this conversation going, all right?
All right. You take care, man.
Wonderful. God bless y'all. We're going to take a break, and we'll see y'all back in just a little bit.